Hi, Upstream. I'm really excited to be joining you today to talk about the developer experience gap. My name is Rachel Stevens. I'm a senior analyst with RedMonk. And at RedMonk, we call ourselves the developer-focused industry analyst firm. And what that means in practice is that we help track and contextualize technology adoption trends. And in particular, we tend to focus on the lens of the developer when we do that. That's not to say we don't care about all of the other constituencies that exist. We care about the operations folks, the executives, the data people, the security people, like everybody who is involved with the process of shipping and delivering software definitely matters. But we pay particular focus to the developers because what we've realized over the years is that developers have a rising influence in understanding what is getting used in the enterprise. My colleague Steve O'Grady wrote a book in 2013 called The New Kingmakers, and he posits that developers are increasingly responsible for what is actually selected and used within enterprise architectures. And we understand lots of people are involved in these decisions. But what we've found over the years is that developers have increasing access to hardware and software like they really never have in a time prior to this cloud and open source era. People can kick the tires on things, people can test things out. We can get software as a service subscriptions rather than have to sign up for full like perpetual licenses. And that can make the upfront cost a little bit more palatable to test something. And all of this comes together to mean that developers don't need permission in this era in a way that they might have in the past in order to try something else. And this means that developers really do have a say in not only what's getting used in dev and test, but that dev and test stuff very often seems to manage to work its way to prod. And we live in this world where the future is not always even. I think probably you've all heard this quote somewhere in your conference talk experience at times, and I'm going to throw it at you again. This is from William Gibson. William Gibson is a science fiction author. He wrote The Neuromancer, and he also was one of the pioneers of the cyberpunk genre, which is great. And William Gibson has this lovely quote. It's, "The future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed." And that is absolutely true of the technology landscape right now. We have the world of containers and Kubernetes coexisting with serverless, which exists with like VMs and bare metal, and we have managed services, and we have people running like micro VMs on the edge, and we have stuff that's running everywhere, all intermingling with our legacy. And this means that we have this abundance of architectural choice and this abundance of the future that exists not only within like kind of across the range of organizations, but also within any given organization. We have a whole host of people who are trying to figure out, what does the future look like? Because the choices available to us are absolutely astounding. Developer choice is exploding, not just in like the abstraction layers that we can pick, but then all of the choices within all of those abstraction layers themselves. Across all aspects of the SDLC, we just have this embarrassment of riches available to us. And what we found is that choice is, it's a little bit free like a puppy. We sometimes say this about open source, where yes, like you can get the free puppy from the box by the person who has all the box of puppies next to the grocery store. But that means that you have to take the puppy home and you're in charge of feeding it and walking it and all of the things that requires for the puppy's like care and well-being. Same is true of like if you decide to bring open source in, it was free to bring in, and then you have to do all of the work on the back end. Same is true of the integration of tools that we bring into our toolchain. The choice is amazing. The act of integrating all of those choices and orchestrating all of those choices and maintaining all of those choices can be a huge lift. This is the obligatory slide that people show in their talks when they want to talk about the ecosystem being complex. And so this is my obligatory slide that like the ecosystem is complex. And this is only one part of the ecosystem. Like this is a cloud native part of the ecosystem. We just talked before that there's so many other things that exist in terms of architectural patterns that people are trying to exist with. And it's really, really hard for people not only to rationalize what am I choosing in terms of all these little squares, but like, how am I actually putting all of this together and what building blocks do I need? And this is kind of the essence of the developer experience gap. We've created this tool chain that's kind of held together in some places by like bubblegum and duct tape. And it's created this obstacle course for people who are trying to figure out what it is that we have built here. How do we keep it all running? How do we get it all running together, which is important? And we've built like this really like complex multi-factor developer tool chain that we have to figure out how it works. And we have to make bets on what this tool chain is going to comprise in the future so that we are not that we're not making the wrong bets today. And it's kind of just this low level friction that exists and we all have come to live with, but it just kind of exists throughout the entire process of delivering and shipping software. Where we can, we've tried to attack these things programmatically. We've tried to automate things, we've tried to script things, but there's always gaps that exist within the tools. And this results in a subpar experience for a lot of developer and operational teams. And so if you think about like the tool chain, like from the first line of code through test and build and integration and deployment, all the way out to production, like we've assembled this patchwork quilt of products and services from different suppliers, some from first-party suppliers, some of them are managed, some of them are not, but it's a diverse and fragmented tool chain that we have to maintain. And this complexity all exists within the context of digital velocity and developer velocity. We have this imperative that we're all trying to move faster. So one of the buzzwords that exists is prevalent throughout the industry is digital transformation. Digital transformation is a buzzword that's often meaningless if you try to dive down into the specifics, other than this one underpinning desire that tends to be part of everybody's digital transformation journey. And that underpinning desire is the desire to go faster. We have a whole bunch of organizations who are compelled to try to move faster, to ship faster, to exist in a world where they're competing with digital native companies in their product space who are trying to figure out how to adapt their systems to a world in which they can do more things. They're trying to move faster in this complex landscape. One of the ways that we can move faster is trying to assemble the right tools. That's an important part of addressing the developer experience gap. But tools alone aren't going to solve our problems. Tools and culture have to feed one another. You know, like if you're trying to address all of this in all by yourself, like with your procurement department alone, like you're in for a world of disappointment. The tools have to feed into the practices that you're building. So one of the ways, the shorthands that tends to happen in the industry, it can look a lot of different ways, but we can talk about kind of pulling down silos, this DevOps culture, where we're saying, okay, like we collectively need to be working towards delivering software where all of us are responsible for the ownership of what's being run in our organization. And all of us need to be responsible for what's being built. It's this collective organization push to be rowing in the same direction. And the terminology that we use might look different in different organizations. Maybe you're agile, maybe you're SRE, like maybe you're doing it in a different way, but like the overall concept of like, how do we get this culture that enables us to move faster is an important part of this drive. So like, how do we think about our culture? Like, how are we thinking about our silos? And I would offer these 4 bullet points as potential just like pulse checks on how does your company think about software? When do you ship? How do you ship? Who decides if you ship? And what happens when there is an outage? So those are some things that can give you just kind of a good sense for where your company is at. And I want to dive in just specifically. So on that first bullet point, let's just kind of dive in there because I think that's illustrative of kind of how you can be thinking about this. So question 1 is like, do you ship on Fridays? Like, is that something that your company willingly does? Like, if you don't, you're totally not alone. Most enterprises would agree, like we have Friday freezes, we have no deploy Fridays. Like we don't want to disrupt the apple cart right before everybody goes out on the weekend. We don't want to make it so that we introduce instability into our system when we have people least equipped to deal with it. Definitely, we have people across the industry who do not ship on Fridays. At the same time, we have some folks who vehemently argue about this online all the time about you should be able to ship on Fridays. You should be able to move to a CD system. You should be able to have frequent, more small commits, like shipping should not be scary. And that is also good. That especially if you're living, like if you're thinking about William Gibson's uneven future, like if you're living in the side of the world in which the future, like you're already in the future and you're in that part of the unevenness, like that's all fine and good to say that you can ship. For a lot of people, it's really aspirational, or maybe not even aspirational. For some enterprises, like this vision of the future is freaking scary, and it can feel like inviting catastrophic failure and in a spectacular way. And so we're trying to get to a point where we can understand where our culture is at and how we need to get to a point where we can be shipping software in a way that feels like we are moving in a place where agility and stability are supporting forces within our organizations. It's really common in our industry, especially if you're in a highly regulated industry, to approach velocity and security as trade-offs, because it can seem like there's a tension between these forces, right? But what we've learned, and we've seen time and again in studies like the Dora report, that high-performing organizations have agility and stability as complementary forces that don't take away from each other, but rather they help build each other. Elite performers aren't just faster, but they have higher quality software. And we see that the number of deploys that an organization can do in any given time period is actually correlated with having better quality software. And so all of these things are like things that just to think about: how's your culture? How are you thinking? Where are you moving towards? And what do we need to do so that we can move fast without breaking things? And how do we help overcome this developer experience gap and enable developer velocity in a world of complexity? One of these things is thinking about the concept of the golden path, which is the golden path concept is championed by Spotify, where they talk about having an opinionated and supportive path to get something into production. Thinking about kind of having supported scaffolding. So if you choose this set of tools and this set of practices, we will support it and document it and help you get your application into production. That's kind of like the canonical golden path. The other thing I want to talk about, though, is kind of that the Wizard of Oz, like yellow brick road, where it's like the magical world of driving quality and resilience and the path to get to where we're trying to go. And so yes, like golden path, absolutely one way in which we can drive velocity, but like what are the paths that are kind of helping us metaphorically get to a place where we can ship better software? One is CI/CD, and I think the root of a lot of goodness in software delivery starts with your CI/CD system. You have to be confident about the systems that we're shipping. So we're going to test and we're going to test and we're going to test some more. We're going to unit test and we're going to integration test and we're going to do lab tests. That's great. And then we're going to get to the charity majors view of the world and we're going to test in production, because we can't just understand our systems before we have shipped it. It's the test and prod or live a lie. I love that. It's trying to understand what's really happening to our systems. And that's so important because we have to understand the potential impacts to our system in order to build truly resilient systems and to feel confident in the things that we're building and shipping. And we all talked about how software has eaten the world. We all know that. One of the things is the pipeline is eating software. Like pipelines are such an important aspect of getting software into your production environment that it's definitely something to be thinking about. It's like, how have I built my pipeline to be resilient? And how have I automated things? How have I started to think about this world? Then when we talk about this, the next concept that kind of evolves out of CI/CD is progressive delivery. This is a term that's championed by my colleague, James Governor, and it's a really great practice because what it is talking about kind of decoupling the release and deployment of software into a way where we can have a little bit more control over potential blast radiuses of things. So thinking about like routing and feature flags, canaries, blue-green deployments, and A/B testing, multi-stage releases, validated deploy groups, like all of those things that make it so that you can test what's happening in your production as you roll something out to production and be able to roll it back easily and to understand the results and impacts of what you're doing. And so that you can make it so that people who are not typically in those engineering decisions have a chance to have a say in when the market is ready to release things. So can your product managers or your marketing teams have a say for when some of these feature flags flip and turn on? And can you have a way that you have various teams having input in when something is actually released to the customer? Progressive delivery can also feel a little bit less scary to an organization than something like continuous delivery, because there is more of that element of control and the feeling that we have kind of this blast radius that we can help control. And the other thing that is really helpful as we start to think about how can we go fast, the way that we go fast is having visibility into our systems. So this is bringing together our metrics and our logs and our traces, but it's more than just having those things together. It's also being able to understand and explore our systems' behaviors, being able to ask questions of our systems and to explore the unknowns, building those fast feedback loops, especially so that information gets back to our development teams quickly, so that if we're having an issue in production, it's not something that developers are finding about far down the line, but we can fix it quickly. And building our apps to be observable is not just something that hits the operations teams, it's also going to be part of that developer team because we're starting to break down those silos. So building resilient engineering organizations are really important. And so all of those things, so thinking about how can we build systems around our software delivery that can allow us to get to a point where we can go fast in a complex landscape. There's also another couple kind of like big picture things that we need to be thinking about in this complex landscape. We as an industry tend to think that we are moving forward. We do move forward. There are through lines to how we move forward. We have an overall direction of travel and advancement of technology, but there are also like parts of our industry that tend to move kind of as narrative arcs and that swing back and forth as pendulums. One of those pendulums that swings in our industry is this movement between bundling and unbundling our solution packages. And I think that thinking about how we are bundling and unbundling in this world of developer experience gap and how we're trying to deliver our software is a really important thing to talk about because there's some interesting forces happening in the market right now. So platforms, like capital P platforms, are one path towards addressing the developer experience gap and building kind of these resilient and observable systems. Platforms, like think about going to that grocery store and just choosing a pre-baked cake. You're going to have less choices around what is in it. It's going to be more opinionated. It's going to be less customizable, but it's also going to be pre-built for you, which is always great. And it can help address that fragmentation problem. You can have more native integrations, less glue code, and improve that developer experience. I think one of the things that's really interesting about platforms is that we at RedMonk have Heroku has come up probably more in our conversations in the last 2 years than it has in the decade prior to this. Like not necessarily like Heroku the company, but like Heroku the dream, like the dream of like this magical experience of being able to deploy an application and having it be easy and seamless and not a heavy lift. And we've seen a lot of specialized platforms come to market in recent years trying to address that. So we've seen things like Vercel and Netlify and Render and Dark, and we've seen Cloudflare Pages, and we've seen AWS Amplify try to come to market. So we've seen these moves from both new and established vendors of trying to address this of like, okay, let's take some of the choice out of this and make it a little bit easier to help people go faster in certain scenarios. But like these are the capital P platform solutions, but like we as a market have not been great at delivering platforms for the last 10, 15 years. Like the last 10, 15 years, we've delivered primitives, not platforms, even though we as an industry also tend to call everything we do a platform, which makes it really complicated. There's a conflation of terms, but like, if you think about the cloud vendors, for example, like you can think of the cloud as like a platform, but like the AWS canonically like has so many services and individual services that sit on their cloud that you are then in charge of assembling yourself. So it's a platform of primitives, and you're in charge of assembling all of those primitives. And there's fragmentation even within an individual vendor that makes it so like fragmentation in a vendor and also fragmentation in the industry as a whole. But it can make it really, really tricky to figure out which ingredients to buy. So you have maximum choice, maximum flexibility to choose what it is that you want to do to build this cake, but it's still up to you to choose all the right ingredients and figure out what it is you're building and assemble it all yourself. We're seeing some paths in the market to try to smooth this out a little bit so that there's like when we talked about the golden path and having that scaffolding, like it's going to think of that kind of as like a recipe. But we have this concept of trying to smooth some of these rough edges in the market and making primitives just a little bit easier for people to use and consume. So if we think about like Microsoft is a really key example here. So like if you think about Microsoft, they have a touch point over here at VS Code. They have the Azure cloud as a production target. So you have kind of both ends of the SDLC spectrum. And in the middle, they have acquired GitHub, and they have introduced GitHub Actions. And if you look at that, like you can start to see this skeleton framework build out of I can see how my workload gets from code to production using their system. And they can start to smooth out some of those rough edges, build those integrations. I think if anyone lived through like the integrated innovation days of yore, that might make you start to feel worried. But like the market is too fragmented now for any vendor to own the entire SDLC. It's not going to happen. But one of the things that might happen is that we start to see these collection of services that start to come together in some unique and interesting ways, where we start to understand how all of these tools work in conjunction with another. And we start to build that path for people so that everyone is not out there trying to build their own golden path to production, but we start to have like these pieces that are known to work together, and we can start to make it easier for organizations and enterprises to use tools in conjunction with one another. Because whether or not we're going that like the platform route or the primitive route, successful tooling needs to be thinking about the context in which it exists. Like our successful tooling in this next era of tools is going to be comprehensive. We can't just think about one aspect of the developer toolchain anymore. We can't just think about what one tool and one vendor does. We have to think about our services in conjunction with other services. What commonly sits around this? How is this something that's going to be helpful to a developer? How is a developer commonly going to use this? How are these things going to integrate? And like, it's not just enough to say like, oh, the APIs are compatible. It's like we have to think about like the true usability and integration points for a developer to use it. It has to be developer native. We can't expect everyone to come to you. You have to actually start to integrate into those developer workspaces. So think about how you integrate into the Git workflow. How do you integrate into IDEs? And can you do that in a thoughtful and elegant way? Have you thought about your designs and your aesthetics and make it a pleasure to use? Like we said, it's going to be multi-vendor. We can't go back to a world where one person owns everything. It's really unlikely that any vendor is going to be able to exclusively own everything front to back. And instead, we're going to have to think about this wider world where pieces have to start integrating together. And last, we need to think about being multi-runtime. So we're not in a world of like Java.NET anymore. We're in a world where there's multiple programming languages for developers to choose from. There's a wide variety of really robust language communities and runtime communities. And so we have to be able to incorporate the tooling that developers are wanting to use into our tools and applications. What we're searching for here is this great phrase by Andrew Clay Schaefer, the minimum time to dopamine for developers. We're trying to get our developers moving as quickly as possible. We want to keep our developers happy because it turns out that developer happiness can be a bit of a flywheel for success overall. We want to have developers moving quickly, gets us to a minimum viable product more quickly, gets us to a point where we can see if we're having testing the market and figuring out how we as a company can provide value, and can just be this self-reinforcing good cycle. And so we want to get to a point where our tools and our culture support this. But our tools are not alone going to differentiate what we're doing here. So like as we talk about like the importance of choosing good tools, good platforms, good primitives, and putting them together in a thoughtful way to help overcome the developer experience gap, like make sure that we're thinking that the tools in and of themselves are not where the magic lies. Like the value of the stack is not in the components of the stack, rather how it's all used. So how are we putting it together? That's important, but also focusing on the culture and the people in and around our tools. Because regardless of the industry that developers are in at this point, like developers are becoming a key driver of business value in every industry. And people are increasingly more valuable than the software that they're building. Like engineering has moved from being a cost center to a driver of this top line revenue and top line growth. And so developers and operators learning to partner together as true engineering teams and can have a significant impact on our company's long-term value, our ability to hire and retain developers, our ability to produce value in this new world of trying to figure out this digital transformation and what this all means for us. And our developers are really going to be crucial parts of all of this. So remember, tools are important, the people using the tools even more so. So thank you so much for letting me have a chance to chat with you today. If you want to find me online after this talk, I'd be happy to chat more and answer any questions. Have a great one.